Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range.
I'm having a good time.
You are?
Yeah.
I can tell.
We are rolling.
Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks.
Today's guest is Glenn Chickering. Glenn is the head of faculty at one of the most unique and progressive international schools in the world. Glenn earned his master's degree from Antioch University, New England, USA, with a focus on educating for sustainability. Having been a founding faculty member upon the school's opening over 10 years ago, Glenn has been a part of creating the school's experiential and project-based learning programs across all learning age groups. He's driven in his focus on educating for sustainability and connecting students to their communities in real-world projects. Glenn has presented at numerous conferences on these topics worldwide and continues to be an advocate for educational reform. This is epitomized by his educational leadership and conduct. Always keen to be a learner, Glenn is well placed in a school setting. He helps students see the opportunities for growth and wonder in their learning by tapping into his own childlike nature. Super approachable, friendly, empathetic, and in my opinion, a closet rap and hip-hop music tragic, I often feel that he missed his calling and could have been famous like Vanilla Ice or Eminem in another life. Anyway, these qualities make him much loved by the whole school community. Glenn Chickering, welcome.
Wow, thank you, Shannon. I love the introduction. I love the hip-hop thing, too, but to be honest, my tastes tend to go a little bit more toward the jam band, classic rock, funk conglomeration. Not to say I don't love a little hip-hop. I do like them all.
Are you a music tragic in general? Like, where was that born? Like,
yeah, I'm a music tragic, I would say. You know, I've always loved music, but I found a band when I was living in Colorado that just really struck me, really got in there and grabbed the soul, right, and shook me up and made me a big music fan. And so I started seeing a lot of live music. Through seeing all that live music, I got introduced to all the different genres and just started really appreciating that spontaneity of music, especially live music, right? And how live music has such a tendency to bring thousands of people together in the same moment, right? Which is the key to life, right? Being in the moment and finding that bliss of the magical moment. And music does that so well, right? You're just right on that note with the musicians and 1,000 people right there with you or more. And so it's just a blissful experience.
You mentioned Colorado. Are you from Denver, Colorado, or?
I grew up in Michigan, born in Detroit, and I moved out to Colorado after college to be a ski bum, more or less. I just really fell in love with skiing while I was in college. I really fell in love with traveling just growing up, with my parents taking me all over the country. And then so after college, myself and a group of friends were like, let's go spend the ski season in Colorado, right? And I had the luxury of graduating in December, so I was able to just pack it up and just go instead of having to go back to school like a lot of my friends did. And so when I got out there and started skiing full time, it just grabbed me, and skiing was the next athletic endeavor for me after I got out of high school and didn't have those team sports anymore. And so skiing really stuck with me. And then when the first summer came around, when it was like, okay, I did my ski season, am I going to go to get a job in the real world with my public relations degree? Or am I going to stick around here and bartend in the beautiful Rocky Mountain summer with all these new friends I made and ski one more season, right? So I went with that option. And then by the end of the second season, I was pretty much hooked and pretty much knew that, okay, I'm going to focus on skiing while I'm still in my athletic prime, and fell into, a really nice job at a really good nightclub, making good money, and then managing that nightclub, and then opened up my own with a couple friends. And so just carved out a really nice life there of skiing all I wanted, and making good money in the winter, and then having big blocks of time off throughout the year to travel and engage in other passions like photography and following music, and it just worked really nicely for me for quite a while.
So, just going back a couple of steps, you said you opened a nightclub.
I did.
Okay. What was it called? I've got to know.
Oh, so the nightclub, that was great. The name is wonderful. We played with this for a long time, and we settled on FUBAR.
Okay.
Are you familiar with FUBAR?
Vaguely.
So FUBAR is an acronym, and it came out of the U.S. military, and it's fucked up beyond all recognition. And so that's what we called our bar, right? And our bar was definitely a party scene, right? Like, so it was a ski town. So in a ski town,
which ski town in
Vail, Colorado.
I know Vail.
And so in a ski town, the bars tend to have a real college feel to them, right? And ours was no exception to this rule. But it was a really cool bar because it was spread out. It was in the basement, and it had 4 different rooms, all soundproof from each other. And so we set it up really nice. Like when you walk down the stairs to enter, we had a jukebox that was really eclectic, right? You could find the Beastie Boys, the Grateful Dead, Madonna, Led Zeppelin. Like, it was all on there, right? We just had so much fun picking out the tunes for that jukebox. Then you walk into the next room, and it's a dance floor.
Nice.
And we're spinning hip-hop. So you've always said I had hip-hop calling. I have DJ'd hip-hop.
At your own nightclub?
At my own nightclub. So you're right. I'm there. I got it. I can relate. And then you go into another room, and we had foosball going and maybe a sports TV. And then another room was just completely lounge and had different music playing in there, too. That was just really chill. So that was fun, you know. I got to be a small business entrepreneur. I got to ski. I got to travel. I got to nurse my other passions. But
Okay.
I was just going to say, as you can imagine, like, being in the bar business for a while can get a little burnout.
That was my next question.
Yeah, so it can get a little burnout, right? And especially being in the bar scene where it's 20-somethings doing shots and just going to get as pissed as they can get, right? And so after a while, I started to tire of it. And when I was in college, oddly enough, I had considered doing my bachelor's degree in education. But at the time, it was, I don't know, I wasn't completely committed to it, and it was like all my other friends were doing business, and it was like, no way, that's how you make money, you go into the business world. And so I just went with that and fell into public relations, communications, just because it felt natural to me. But when I got out to Colorado and I started thinking about, okay, what's the next step from here? I don't want to do this forever. Teaching came back to me. And so I had done a fair amount of coaching, and I was doing coaching in Colorado as well.
Ski coaching?
Ski coaching as well, but
Specifically, what area of skiing?
You know, it's funny.
Alpine?
I was a mogul skier was my big thing, and then I moved more into backcountry. But when I was ski coaching, I was with 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds top age, and it was mostly just free skiing. We would go run the gates for fun, but it was just free skiing and getting these kids out there and keeping their hands in front of them and all those nice basics. So anyway, I started to look into teaching again and signed up to be a substitute teacher in the public school system in Vail Valley and started substitute teaching, right?
So do you feel that your coaching and relating to young people in that setting kind of like maybe like flicked a switch in your brain like, hey, this might be something I want to do on more of a professional level?
Yeah.
Or was that the catalyst?
Yeah, for sure, certainly. Like, I really enjoyed relating to the students. I really enjoyed when they light up, when they figure something out, and really enjoy being,
Or have a light bulb moment.
Yeah, I had light bulb moments and like, wow, you know, this kid's a lot better skier now than they were 2 months ago, and I was a part of that, right? And so all that felt great, and I loved it, and, you know, like, you know, you're going through life, you're looking for a purpose where you can serve and gives you some real value, right? And I was feeling that with the children.
You weren't feeling that with the nightclub?
Well, sometimes for sure, yeah. You know, it's fun. We were giving people a good time, right?
You were.
People were leaving our bar with smiles. Yeah,
Definitely.
for sure.
But you wanted to,
Yeah.
you had a sense that you wanted to be more of service to the community.
Correct, and I wanted to get out of the bar business, so I started the substituting, and I was like, yeah, you know, I think this is it. I think education is what feels right for me, and so then I did a few summer programs, taking students with learning challenges into the wilderness, doing like summer camp things, right? And so I was working with children with learning disabilities. We're taking them out, we're fishing, we're hiking, building the confidence, right? And then seeing that just building that self-confidence was such a catalyst for them to get through some blocks, right? And so like seeing that magic was just more and more, yeah, this is where I want to go. And then, one thing led to another, and my partners and I all agreed kind of at the same time that we were ready to sell the bar. And without even putting it on the market, someone out of the blue walked up and said, would you guys be interested in selling? And so that all fell together. And so then here I am, like kind of footloose, fancy free. And Melinda, my current wife, enrolled at Tulane University, which is in New Orleans in the States, for a master's degree. And I said, all right, I love New Orleans. Let's do this. I'm ready for a switch. So we moved to New Orleans. And
did you guys meet in Colorado?
Actually, we met in New Orleans. I was living in Colorado at the time.
So you sold the bar and then met her in New Orleans?
No. Rewind a little bit. I was in New Orleans for Halloween concert, as a matter of fact. A band called Widespread Panic, by the way, which if you have not looked them up, check them out. And that's where I met my wife and my future wife. And we became friends at first. We just ran in the same circle of friends that overlapped, and that's how we met. We stayed in touch. We were friends. She wanted to come back to the States after traveling for a while and work and make money for a season, came to work in my bar. That's when we started dating. And so anyway, flash forward back again to selling that bar, moving to New Orleans. Then I started teaching more full-time, but still not full-time. I didn't have a teaching degree.
I was gonna ask,
I didn't have a teaching license. So I was a full-time sub at an international school pretty close to my house in New Orleans. And this was a year after Hurricane Katrina. So they were in desperate need of teachers.
Yeah.
Everything was in disarray. They just needed some warm, reliable bodies, right? And so...
Were you dealing with some students that were suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, or was there a lot of that going on?
For sure. These are students who lost their homes, had their best friends,
Displaced.
move and displaced all over the country. So yeah, there was a lot of that going on. It was a really interesting time in the city, and a lot of people who just loved it and who were just really intent on loving it back to health. So it was a really wonderful time to be there. But for the students, yeah, it was tough. It's funny that year at that school was one of the things that that really stuck with me as I became a teacher full-time and went full-time in education. There was an article in the paper where they asked the students, okay, we have a chance here. At the time, New Orleans, before the hurricane, was the worst performing public schools in the nation, right? And so all the educators in that area were like, oh my gosh, we have this opportunity to create something brand new and fix this. And so they did a poll with students, and they asked the students, what are the things you want? What do you need most, right?
So effectively, you had a clean slate to work with.
Effectively have a clean slate to work with. And so the top 3 things that came out of what these students wanted, I think number 3 was books and pencils in the classroom. Number 2 was toilet paper in the restrooms. And the number 1 thing they wanted was teachers that like us. Right? And that really stuck with me, right? And when I was teaching after I had read this, and it just stuck with me, right? I'm like, okay, I'm going to be here for this kid.
How do you interpret that? Like, teachers that like us, do you think maybe they were more implying teachers that are tolerant of us?
Perhaps,
maybe,
right?
Yeah.
Perhaps. But to be honest, like as I work more with class management, I believe that you can take a crazy bunch of kids and just... be patient through some of the chaotic parts, but really start to make a personal connection with those kids, and then they'll respect you, right? And then you can bring them back around. And I saw that with these kids, right? And at first, I was an outsider, right? And I was brand new to the city, and it was a very ethnically diverse school, but mostly... Would
you say low socioeconomic as well?
It was low socioeconomic, and a vast majority were African American or Latin American. And it was a trilingual school, actually, French, Spanish, and English. And so...
And they were those languages were embedded in the curriculum?
Correct.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so it was trilingual, but the students would pick a bilingual path. They were either French and English or Spanish and English.
Gotcha.
Yep. And so those students had gone through, the hurricane. They'd gone through all those upheavals. And being from a really underperforming school district, they certainly... had some behavioral issues, and they certainly meant teachers that will tolerate us. But that's what we need to do as educators is learn to deal with these students going through rough times, right? And say, hey, we're here for you. We're going to set some boundaries, and we expect you to stay within them, but we're going to love you unconditionally. And once you do that, once you can make that connection, and they know, you know what, actually, this guy's here for me, it changes the dynamic completely.
You earned some trust. So after you found out those 3 things... So then you were faced with the task of redeveloping a curriculum. Is that where you're at with a team of teachers or at the school?
The school was, but in my role at that time, I was a permanent sub, so I wasn't really part of the team doing that.
But you were working in that environment.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Working in that environment, see a school trying to reinvent itself.
Got you.
Actually, while I was there, when I got hired, there was a brand new principal. Halfway through the year, that principal left, and I learned after I left, that principal left halfway through the year. So it was a struggling time for that school. So it was good training, right, to be in a school that was a little chaotic.
Do you think it built resilience for you?
For sure.
It must have.
For sure. And, my next teaching role after that, Melinda and I decided to live overseas for a while, and we went to Taiwan, and I was teaching at a school in Taiwan, and Taiwan's the epitome of order in their schools, right? So that seemed so easy after coming from New Orleans. I think that did build some resiliency and prepared me well for the chaos that was the first years of green school.
Yeah, like I've watched you operate, and you are, I think, deceptively firm in your behaviour management. And I mean that as a compliment when I say deceptively firm, because, on the outside it could look like Glenn's very calm in this situation, but I have then realised that you are quite firm and clear-cut with your expectations and boundaries. Like, what was the evolution of that? I mean, is it still progressing, that approach to dealing with challenging teenagers and young people, or do you feel like you've worked out the formula?
No, I certainly don't feel like I worked up the formula. Like, I appreciate in the bio where you gave me kudos for always being a learner, which I try to do, and always learning, right? And every little class has different dynamics, and so you have to be nuanced in that class. What worked with this group of 12 kids might not work with this group of 12 kids, and the personalities are so complex. So it's a constant state of nuance and working your way through it. But I feel like I lost my train of thought right there. But if you go back to like being firm, those boundaries are really important. Like, children need those, and they appreciate it, right? And studies have shown that students, from their parents, from their educators, from everywhere, it's like they may push and they may fight against those boundaries, and it may even get ugly sometimes, but they appreciate it, and it always comes out, and they realize that those boundaries are there because these people care about me, and they want me to be safe, and they want me to excel, right? So even though it can be hard as a parent especially, but even as an educator, to deal with those kids fighting those boundaries and pushing those boundaries and whatnot, it's just really important to hold them and have a good explanation of why you're holding them, and hold them accountable, but in supportive ways.
It's a craft.
It's a craft.
It's a craft.
It's a craft.
Would you agree with me if I said that it takes years to really develop, and like you said, you never stop learning, and then the clientele changes, then you have to relearn.
Yep.
So what was school like for you?
School, like, for me was...
Let's go back to your early years, like primary school Glenn.
Primary school Glenn.
Were you a good kid?
Yeah. I was a good kid. I was a good student who did well.
In Detroit?
Detroit suburb. I have to say that for my wife. She teases me when I tell everyone I'm from Detroit. But blue-collar suburb.
You know Eminem's from Detroit.
I do. Yep.
Sorry.
8 Mile. Yeah. Yeah, so it's Kid Rock, White Stripes.
There you go.
So anyway, flashing back to primary school, I was a good kid. I was always silly, but not to the point of where I drove my teachers crazy and was in the principal's office all the time or anything. But goofing around and having fun. And primary school, actually all through high school, it all came fairly easy to me. And I found out a little too early that I could coast and not throw a giant effort and still, get the B's, get the A's, and school became a place for me to go hang out with my friends. And I got into sports at a young age as well, so school was a big driver for that and a big platform for me to go to school, hang out with my friends, play baseball, play football, and have fun. Like, school was a lot of fun for me.
So sport was a big part of it?
Sport was a big part.
Cool. Do you think, like, I often hear from young people that they hate school, but they love sport,
Right.
And not all. There's also a lot of students that hate sport and PE and stuff like that. But I fall into the same category as you. Like, sport and activity kept me coming to school every day.
Yeah.
I couldn't stay still. So So you transitioned straight from high school to a university degree, correct?
I did.
So that says to me that you took those last few years of school quite seriously, or serious enough to actually access university, correct?
I did. Serious enough to access university.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Not
That's
super proud of that grade point average, but it got me into university.
Yeah, and it sort of sounds to me like, would you agree if I said, like, teaching kind of chose you? You didn't choose teaching?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, because, like, I had a similar situation. I didn't go straight from high school to university. I had a couple of years where I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I was really into skateboarding, you know, and I used to go to the skate park and teach kids. Kids would be like, oh, how do you do this trick? Or how do you drop in on this? And then I'd see those light bulb moments, and it was actually and I'd see how stoked they got, and I'd be like, and that was actually what sent me on the journey, you know. Yeah. And as time goes on, I actually appreciate the craft more and more, and love of the job has improved, you know. Do you feel like now that you've been a teacher and an educational leader for some time, how is your passion for it going? Is it still there?
Oh, it's still there for sure. If anything, it's
Why?
more. It's
Why?
more. You know, because I've come to believe being at Green School, you know, and that was such a blessed opportunity to get in here and to get involved with a group of educators with a grand vision and so much creative abilities and passion for the craft. To really see what's possible with education and what schools could be. Because if we flash back to where I was in school, like I was there, I had fun, I was engaged in sports, but I was bored mostly. In my classes, I was just bored, right? It was just all, you know, if you go to the holistic learning, when I went to school, it was just all drilling the intellectual part, right? Learn this, memorize this, right? And I'm a pretty kinesthetic guy, so I was just really bored. And when I see that we can do a different model and that we can honor the kinesthetic learning, we can honor that social-emotional learning, which is so important, and that inner landscape, you know, that we shy away from calling spiritual, right, just because of religious connotations, but indeed really is, right? And just all those aspects of learning that are every bit as important as intellectual, right? And what we can do and how we can reach kids and turn them on. Like I see kids right here who know themselves, trust themselves, and know how they want to engage in the world better than I did until I was 42 years old. So, you know,
I was a late bloomer too.
And that's a little bit of an exaggeration, right?
Yeah.
Because I was a good person when I was younger and whatnot, but you know, like to just really know, like, oh my God, you know, the world's systems, there's so many of these systems that are in trouble, and I want to engage. I want to be part of the solution, right? When I was in my 20s, you know, I wanted to be a great skier, and I wanted to have fun, right? But to have that sense of purpose in life at that age, that's a pretty good gift. And to have that sense of confidence for, like, any kid can come in and really struggle with some of the intellectual stuff, maybe because of a learning processing challenge, or maybe because it's just not their cup of tea, but see them thrive kinesthetically, artistically, spiritually, socio-emotionally, and find that switch that will give them that confidence to just really engage in life and just really be present and authentic and feel really good about themselves. Then I get really excited, right? Like, let's flip the model, right? Because what that traditional model was that I went through and that I suspect you did as well.
Yes.
You know, it was preparing students for an age that's gone by, right? And as I get more into sustainability and more see, you know, the peril that our world's ecosystems are in, not to mention our societal systems, I realize that, like, I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I want her to grow up and have safety and have children and her children and their children and their children and their children, to still have a world that's beautiful like I got to grow up in, and I just want to be part of the change. And I feel that, like you say, education chose me. I feel that this is the best way that I can serve humanity and serve my daughter, right? Even selfishly, like, the best thing that I can do is help turn on more and more children and get them to be little systems thinkers who know themselves, love themselves, trust themselves, and engage and know how to engage with complex systems.
Yeah, and nurture lifelong learning.
Exactly.
That's, in my opinion, sustainability as well.
Yeah.
You know, we often link sustainability with the environment, the physical environment, but,
Right.
you know, we need to be really nurturing sustainability within the individual, because without longevity, what can we really do for the world? So I really identify with what you're saying there, And you guys were in Taiwan.
Yes.
You and Melinda, your wife.
Yep.
And then you transitioned to Indonesia. So what called you to Bali? Did you go from Bali to Taiwan to Bali, or?
I did, and that was a bit serendipitous, right? And Melinda was just finishing up her graduate degree in international development while we were in Taiwan. She started it at Tulane University in New Orleans, finished up her second year distance learning, had done really well, and applied for a Fulbright fellowship. And Fulbright is an organization that comes through the U.S. State Department. And it was created, and I don't know this as well as I should, but it was created to promote cross-cultural cooperation and awareness between the U.S. and other countries around the world. And so it's a really prestigious fellowship. It's very, very selective. Not many people get it. Melinda, we had traveled through Indonesia years before and really fell in love with it, and Bali in particular. And so she had done a lot of her graduate study projects as Indonesia as a case study. And so she applied for a Fulbright fellowship to work in Indonesia and was awarded it. So when she was awarded that, we were actually engaged to be married, planned to be married in Bali that summer. And it was like, ooh, hold on, you can't say no to this fellowship. You have to take it. So you take it, and we'll just put off getting married until that fellowship's over. And then I actually toyed with, because I had a good job at a cool school in Taiwan. I was saving money. I'm like, maybe I'll just stay here for the year while you do the fellowship. Being through the U.S. State Department, I wouldn't be able to live with her. She wouldn't even know where she was placed till last minute. So it was kind of like, okay, we're just going to commit to 10 months like this. But I said, you know what, the travel within Indonesia is so cheap. Why don't I look and see if I could find work in Indonesia? And then it would be easy for us to see each other on long weekends, Christmas holidays, all that. And in that internet search, up popped Green School, right? Opening in August of 2008, a school without walls, focused on sustainability. And I was like, ooh, yeah, that's what I've been looking for. Because going back to getting into substitute teaching in the Val Valley schools, to New Orleans public schools, although it was international school, it was public. It was international because of that trilingual thing.
Gotcha.
And then in Taiwan, a language school that was very much focused on rote learning, I was like, this isn't what I want to do as a teacher. What do I want to do? And then I saw Green School opening with this vision. I was like, that's what I want to do. And I'll never forget showing Melinda the webpage and like, Melinda, look at this. And it was in Bali where we planned on getting married. And she was like, ooh, Glenn, everyone's going to want to work there. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I got to try. And she was like, yeah, you should definitely try. So I threw in my CV, and I got really lucky because they had pretty much completed all their hiring, but they realized they were short on male teachers, and especially in the primary. I think they had none. And so they were really hoping to get a male primary teacher. And they also realized that they didn't budget or plan for sports and activities. So on my CV, I highlighted my coaching, and I think in the cover letter, I said something about I could run after school sports and all this, and it lit a bell with them. And so they got back with me right away, and I actually interviewed with Cynthia Hardy, one of the founders. Wow. And and we just had a good rapport, and I happened to be like that last little cog they were looking for, and I got my foot in the door, and it's just been a learning experience ever since.
So how many students were at the school?
We opened, I think, with 85. I hear different reports of 80 up to 90. I've heard 60, but my memory says 85.
Across
kindergarten through grade 8.
Grade 8. Yeah. So there was no high school then? Really?
No.
Wow. So once you made the move, you got the job.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how were those first years? Like, from what I hear, there was no real curriculum. So everything you did, you had to develop along the way.
Correct.
So can you describe the challenges you faced in that time? Was it a fun time? Was it an easy time? Was it a confusing time?
All of the above. Definitely not easy,
okay.
but there was a lot of fun. And for that, I owe a great debt to an aunt. I have an aunt who said, Glenn, always remember to make your experience your own, right? Because I think I was venting on her that, like, there was a lot of negativity. There was a lot of frustrated teachers who came here for the dream of this school and saw that oh my gosh, you haven't thought this all the way through. We don't have a curriculum. The classrooms weren't even finished being built. And so there's a little bit of a rebellion. And I was getting frustrated with it because for me it was like, oh my God, look at this blank slate. This is fun. We get to do this. And she said, make your experience your own. She's like, don't pick up on the negative thing. Like, you're going to have some tough times. Like, that's okay. But like, if you see something that's going to light you up or a great learning experience, just take it. So those first years for me were just all about learning. And I was co-teaching in the grade 1-2 combined classroom actually, and teaching PE, right? For all the classes. And so for me, it was just, okay, I'm working alongside a teacher who's been doing it for 10 years and knows this. And I get to learn, like, how do you develop curriculum? Like, if they would put that job on me, I just wouldn't have known what to do. But luckily I was working alongside people who did have something to fall back on. Okay, this is what I did before. This is what we'll do here. And so I got to go through that process and learn through that. And I got to trial and error a ton, right? And I got to teach grade 1-2, and I got to teach PE for the whole grades, and I got to do the after school activities, and I got to do a lot of first aid certifications. I got to do so much. So it was just like this
professional development.
Yeah, it was like graduate school times 10. It was professional development. I was packing. I used to say that those first 5 years of green school, I got about 20 years of educational experience, just because about all the things I was tasked with doing, all the things I had the opportunity to try. But it was after that, what was it? The third year of green school, when I realized, okay, this is it. This is what I believe in. This connecting our students to the community, this giving them the tools to understand the principles of sustainability and connect with the world's systems and make a difference. Like, this is what I believe in. And then I found this graduate program through Antioch University, and I said, okay, this is where I want to go as an educator. And so went back, and that was a really wonderful program because it was 2 summers where I had to go to the campus and do classes on campus while school was out here. And then throughout the school year, it was distance learning, where I had, a cohort of people that I could bounce ideas off of and professors who would give me feedback. So I basically, about that time, moved into the middle school and was helping to create a middle school program, because before we didn't really have a designated middle school program. And so part of my work in my graduate program was me trying to create this middle school program and bouncing it off experts in the field of educating sustainability. So it was just this wonderful opportunity, like killing 2 birds in 1 stone. I have to do this anyway, so I might as well do it with these experts in the field and earn my graduate degree along the way. So it was just a really opportunistic thing.
Did you have a lot of support from the parents, those founding parents, who obviously took a risk and a gamble? Did you feel a deep sense of responsibility to those people?
For sure. That was a tough time in that respect, because a lot of those parents were really disappointed, and rightly so in some respects.
Why disappointed?
Well, because we didn't have that curriculum set.
And they thought they were under the impression there was?
They were under the impression that things were a little more set up and ready to go than they actually were. And rightly so, right? So yeah, they came in hot a lot of times, right? And sometimes they came in hot to me when I didn't have the many years of educational experience to really back everything up. And so sometimes it was really tough to back up what I was doing with years of experience and whatnot. So yeah, it was under fire a lot. And to answer your question, it ran the gamut. We had parents that were super supportive, that got it, but still believed in what we were doing and came in to help us how they could. And we had parents that just read us the riot act and took their kids out of school. And yeah, it was the whole gamut.
And left a few scars along the way?
Good question. It built up resiliency. Yeah, for sure. There's probably some scars there, but mostly I feel like, wow, I dealt with that. I can deal with anything, right? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think when you get out of it, like when you take a risk like that, whether you're a parent or a teacher, I think expectations have to be adjusted, and expectations can often lead to disappointment. They need to be reevaluated regularly, and that's something now as a 40-plus-year-old man that I'm still teaching myself. expectations can be a dangerous thing, you know?
They can be.
Yeah.
There's a great book by a woman named Byron Katie called Learning to Love What Is, right?
Okay.
You know, and it's like,
What's it about?
it's kind of basically about, God, how do I explain that book?
Being accepting of how things are.
Accepting of how things are, right? And getting rid of that should, right? Like, don't should yourself to death, right? Like, this school should have this, it should have that. And it's like, well, it doesn't, you know? And if we think it should have that, how do we get it there, right? And taking that attitude instead. But the book itself is a lot about doing the inner work to understand what you're bringing to the table in this scene, right?
There's a term I like to use a lot. It's called keeping your side of the street clean. And I love that, and it's just, for me, when I think of that, it's like, well, I just got to worry about what I'm doing and just do it the best I can. And don't worry about what's going on around me. Because you can easily get caught up in it, I think schools are such an enigma, and they're so dynamic. I think it's what drives a lot of teachers to madness. Yeah. Do you agree? Or?
I agree completely, and it's funny, you know, there's a book I was reading as well about relationships, right, and mostly in partnerships like marriages and whatnot, and it said the best thing that you can do for your partner is to keep working on yourself, right, because as much as your partner may drive you crazy, you do the same to them, right, and so be the best version of you can for yourself, and that's the best thing you can do. And I took that into education as well. Like, the best thing we can do for our students is to just work on ourselves, right? So that we're showing up for them present and grounded and centered. And even if we're in a grumpy mood or whatnot, just being open with them. Like, I had a moment today actually with grade 8 where I was just really trying to get through something and really having a hard time to get all their attention. And I was like, please, guys, help me with this. This is really hard. I'm like, it's been a long day. It's been a long week. I need you guys to focus, right? And, like, just be honest. Like, look, I get that I might be a little short right now, but work with me, right?
Yeah, and, like, again, I really identify because the longer I'm in this profession, I realise how important it is. I think teachers are so important to the world, educators. Yeah. And in my first few years as a teacher, I didn't really gauge the significance of it. Yeah. And as I get older, I feel a deep sense of responsibility that I have to walk the talk, live by example. And I wasn't doing that for many years, especially in my early career. And but now I really do want to walk the walk, talk the talk. And you know, even starting a podcast, it was like, well, I'm always telling the kids, experiment, get out of your comfort zone, reinvent yourself, do something different. And then I reflected on myself, and I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Am I doing that?
You know, am I really doing that? So, yeah, like, it is important, and I think it keeps you interested and it keeps you fresh. You know.
Indeed.
So you've lived in Indonesia for many years now. Okay, like, what are some of the challenges, the key challenges that you've faced since you've been here? Like, just from a day-to-day perspective
of living in Indonesia,
Bali. What's really challenging for you? Is it the heat? Is it the traffic?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. Both dues came to my mind, but the heat, I think, is number one. I mean, I come from Northern European stock, right? So being in
Scotland.
the tropics, Scotland and England. There's a little Germany in there too.
Your parents are Scottish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, none of them are really full. It's diluted a couple generations down. Yep. Okay. But yeah, it's hot for me here. I sweat a ton. My skin doesn't react well, and I live for 16 years in the mountains of Vail, Colorado, skiing all the time, right? And even the summers there, there's very little humidity. The nights get down to, I don't know, Celsius-wise, below 20, in the teens for sure. So you put a blanket on, it's cool. I rarely have to deal with this heat for many, many years. So all of a sudden to be year-round is a little challenging for me. I definitely miss the winter. And then the traffic is one of the big downsides of Bali. I think, it's only I think about 30 kilometers to get down to the beach from our house, less, but it'll take an hour easy. And then there's no emission controls on the vehicles, so the air quality while you're on the roads is horrible.
Has it just grinded you down?
But then the biggest, as I talk through this, is certainly the distance from family and friends, the lifelong friends. I still have really good friends from when I was in junior high. And we've grown up together, gone through all of life together. I've got, in Colorado, there are, gosh, I think it's 9 children of friends and family of mine within a year to 2 years of my daughter's age, right? So that's a real untapped, like...
Are they still a support network for you?
They are.
Are they your mates that you just, when you're having a bad time, you give them a call?
For sure.
And just have a chat, and they make you feel better?
For sure.
Okay.
For sure. And it's funny, 6 of us got together last summer camping, and it was the first time all 6 of us had been together at one time in 11 years. But it felt like it was 8th grade again. It was fun. But so going back, that distance from family, that distance from friends is tough. Yeah. And at first, it was new and it was fresh, and it was like, oh, just the way it is. And we get back, each July, and we tour and we check in with lots of people, and we have those check-ins, right? But as time goes by and people get older, and especially our parents, it starts to feel like, ooh, we're a long way away. The gap gets bigger. Yeah, it just feels farther and farther away. And as cousins are being born and more, kids of our good friends are growing up, that distance is actually ultimately what made us decide to move on. Wow.
So you are an educational leader now. So you've gone from, ski bum, nightclub owner, and educational leader in an international school that is globally recognised, and very, very progressive and dynamic and challenging on a variety of levels. How did you obtain that position? Did it fall on your lap? Were you tapped on the shoulder, or?
I think I was paying attention when opportunity knocked. Okay. So it was serendipitous. It was serendipitous that my wife was awarded a full right to work in Indonesia, and I looked on a search months before Green School was going to open, and I happened to be that male primary teacher with sports experience that was the last piece for him. So some of that is the universe opening up. Yep. But then to get to where I am, to be a leader, right, and being able to present at international conferences on this type of education, that was a lot of hard work. I put in a lot of hard work for it, and then took advantage of opportunities.
Excuse me. Sorry. Did you make a decision that you wanted to go up? Was it, or like I said, did you actually go, you know what, I do want to be in those leadership roles. I want to have more of a voice up there. Did you actually have a point in your life where you made that call, or did it just happen organically?
It happened a little organically. I was teaching in the middle school, and the gentleman, Andy Slavin, who was one of my big mentors as an educator, he got the opportunity to take the principal job at Green School, right? And he was kind of, at the time, he came on here as a learning support specialist. He's the one that talked them into creating a middle school on its own. So he was taking a lot of responsibility and a lot of expertise he had to get that middle school going. And I was part of a small team with him. A principal job opened up at Green School, and he took it. And when he did that, it kind of left that middle school without that leadership he was giving it. So I kind of organically moved into what we would call the middle school coordinator role in that. As the middle school grew, and as we had more students, more teachers, it became, okay, there's a need for just having a head of middle school, and I was just well positioned for that. And so they asked me if I'd be interested. I was like, yes, I would. And then I would say after about a year of doing that, and then being a part of those big picture planning, making those big picture decisions, and hiring, I really love that aspect. Then that was when I was like, okay, this is where I want to go. Educational leadership is where I want to go.
Right, okay, so reinforce that for you. I really like that. Now, you mentioned just before that you have spoken at conferences around the world. So can you tell us a story about, one you went to recently? I think you went to China, didn't you?
I went to Bangkok, actually.
Bangkok, okay.
Yeah, so I went to Bangkok recently, and...
why are you getting called to these?
Why did I get called for Bangkok? It's funny, actually, there's an organization called 21st Century Learning, which focuses on bringing 21st century skills to schools and giving schools the tools to do it. But they also run a business model where they host a lot of educational conferences, mostly for educational leaders to really share these ideas and how do we implement. And they had heard of Green School, of course, right? And there's a gentleman that works with him, Michael Bowl, who runs a podcast as part of the format to just really get people aware of this organization and these conferences. And they got interested in Green School just because of the name we were making for ourselves, and we're in the region. And so he just looked at Green School, and at the time I was head of middle school and had some things posted online of, videos talking through the middle school program. And he reached out to me. He's like, Glenn, we'd love to have someone from Green School come to this conference. Would you be interested in presenting? And, at the time I talked to Leslie and Kate, and they're like, yes, that would be great. Let's go to that. And then he reached back out and he's like, would you do this podcast with me? Which is the first podcast I ever did, right? And so that's how I first got involved with them. And that was 2 years ago. And then they held the conference again last year, but for whatever reason, I couldn't make it. It didn't work with timing. And then they reached out to me again for this year's conference and said, hey, we'd really love to have you back. And that's how I got back to it. And it's funny, this year's conference with 21 Gels, I think really started to give me a clearer picture of where I want to go as an educational leader. And I did my talk with them focused on the importance of changing the goals of education, right? So if we think about, that traditional educational model, the goal of those schools are to get students either A, into a vocation, or B, into a university. And so the way to do it is by getting those students really good grades and the highest grades and getting them in, right? And just loading that intellectual learning down their throats. But as we know, that's really not serving humanity anymore, right? And as I get more into systems thinking and study that, I realize that if we really want to change the world's systems, these economic systems, these political systems, these ecosystems that are on an unsustainable path, we need to give students the tools to be systems thinkers. We need them to understand how to find a leverage point, either it's just themselves, individually or as a collective. Where do we find the leverage points to make a real difference on this system and steer it on a sustainable path? And in complex systems thinking, there's attributes to this that you can learn and you can start to really understand. And whether you're talking about your own personal physical well-being, emotional well-being, spiritual well-being, or your relationships with your family, with your friends, with your loved ones, the wider community, the ecosystems around you, it's all about complex systems and how they adapt and how they interact and how they rely upon each other. And if we can use school as a platform to give these students those tools, going back to where we were with that importance of personal sustainability, know yourself, trust yourself, love yourself, and then how do you relate with others, right? And especially how do you relate with others that don't think like you do? And how do you collaborate with others that may have different priorities, and how do you learn this, and how do you work with an ecosystem that we need to sustain life on this planet so that we're not going to stop its ability to sustain our lives? And if school is a place where students first get that, know themselves, right, and then understand how complex systems work and interact and adapt and evolve and rely upon each other, and give them those tools and use school as a portal for them to start engaging with society in real world projects, right? By the time they're 18 years old, they've got this, right? And I don't know, there may be a time where universities really have to change their models, right? And that's a big thing, because going back to that changing the goals of school, like we're still, like even Green School, we still have a traditional looking transcript. We still do a lot of things to fit that goal of kids getting into top end universities,
to
right?
conform.
Yeah. So what I really want to do is move that conversation along and like, wait a minute, let's really think about why we're educating our students. Like, we want humanity to thrive and keep going for generations and generations. And this model of education, these academic systems, they're not doing it. They're not serving us. And let's rethink those goals.
Man, I love that, because I also feel like universities have been dictating junior education for so long.
Yeah.
And, we're teaching to that.
Yeah.
And like you said, what are we actually doing for the learner? Like, what are we giving them when they graduate at school? Like,
right.
What tools have they got? Like, from a real life perspective.
Exactly.
And what I'm learning in my later years of teaching, or recent years, I should say, is that the subjects, excuse me, that giving them those life skills of, communicating, problem solving, taking initiative, thinking creatively. Like, they're the things that they're really chewing up. And then you can add, they're transferable to any situation or any job. And then they can, and then dump the content on it. But what we've been doing is dumping the content on them, which often gets discarded as soon as they've learnt it.
Exactly.
And it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
And, I mean, time and time again, you speak to people, oh, what was school like for you? Oh, I hated school. It was terrible. Like, it was just such a waste of time. Like, you hear that time and time again, myself included. So I really do, like, I know it's cliche, but that whole 21st century learning skills is just so, like, I think it is we're on the cusp of a real educational revolution. But what's, in my opinion, is what's holding us back is the confines of rigid school systems. And I'm only talking from Australian perspective because they're so regimented. Yeah. But there's a desire to move away to a more flexible and agile framework.
There is, and there has to be a letting go, right?
Letting go.
Because people are scared, and a lot of the most successful people in the world are people who went through that traditional model, right? And worked their butt off to get 4.0s to get into the top universities. So like, wow, this is what's worked forever. Like, what do you mean we need to let go of that? So it's tough to do. And it's funny, I think a lot about the green school skills and the importance of us fostering them and, from the critical skills and 21st century skills around the world. And one of them we have that you don't see often is adapt. And I do believe that it's one of the toughest ones to really teach, like as a teacher, like to foster a unit or even just a lesson that really fosters adaptation with the students is a tough one to do. It's a tricky one, right? But I really feel like it's the most important because that's the skills our students need right now. The world is evolving so quickly. We need to adapt, and we need to adapt so consistently and constantly. And there's a great quote by Charles Darwin that everybody knows, right? But it's misquoted. Charles Darwin didn't say it's the strongest of the species survives, right? Charles Darwin said it's not the strongest of the species that survives. It's the one that's most capable of adapting.
Right.
And that's what it is, and that's what evolution is, right? It's these species.
I thought it was survival of the fittest.
Right. Well, I don't know Darwin perfectly, right? And there's something on that for sure. But Darwin definitely specified it's the species that's most capable of adapting that survives, right? And that's so important for our generations of for everybody.
It is, yeah. And I think also, I struggle with adaptation for sure, like because it's asking you to move. It's asking you to put your ego aside and what you think should be, how things should be done, and accepting that maybe you're wrong sometimes, and maybe you need to consider another way, and that's my interpretation of adaptation. You can agree or disagree, but yeah, I do. I've never actually heard it discussed like that, because there is, when you think of 21st century learning, it's like, communication, problem solving, they're all the key ones. But wow, man, so it's really interesting. I guess another thing I know we're pressed for time and you're a busy man, so in the role of head of faculty, can you describe an average day in the life of Glenn Chickering, head of faculty?
Average day.
What's an average day for you?
Okay.
From start to finish.
Okay, well, it varies according to the season, and right now I'm kind of wrapping up the heat of the hiring season. So average day for me right now is I'll usually walk in and I'll have at least one, usually two, sometimes three interviews scheduled. I'll be checking in with the heads of the learning neighborhoods about different people I'm interviewing and the fits they might be. I worked on a project to start this year of having teachers set goals for the year. One personal well-being goal, one professional mastery, one goal focused on the Green School mission and how they can bring their learning programs toward it. So I'll usually have one or two meetings with teachers about those goals. I'll often have a meeting like our advisory council meeting. Some sort of meeting like that, or with other learning neighborhoods, is common. I often slip in as substituting a class for teachers, as we don't have substitutes on. And right now I'm teaching a grade 8 thematics class, so that's fun. That's in my day. What else will be in there? Emails. I will answer emails, of course. But those are the big ones. Doing interviews, checking in with the LN heads about, who we got to hire for next year, having meetings with teachers about their goals.
Do you enjoy that, having the role of the person that gets to screen applicants?
I love that part of my
pick
job.
The best fit.
It's fun. I've been thinking a lot lately about, what have I done for this school, and I'm going to walk away from here and I'll be able to count, probably about 20 teachers whom I either hand selected and was more or less solely responsible for making the decision. Although that's an exaggeration, right? Like I always was in consultation with Leslie and with this, but it was my baby, my vehicle to drive and to say, this is the one I think, right? And it's pretty rare that I would say, I want this person and Leslie or someone else would disagree and shut me down. So I can say that there are at least 20 people that I said, this person would be good to have on this team, and this person will be good for our students. And I was right. And they're here and they're thriving and our school is better for it. And it's fun that actually the first 2 people that I ever interviewed at Green School and that I had any say in their hiring, and I wasn't the last say in these hirings, I'll fully admit. There was a principal at the time who got to make the last decision, but I did one of the interviews for both of them, and I sat with him and chatted it out, and I said, I think this one and I think that one, and he agreed, and we hired them. And one of them is Sal, who's going to be our next head of learning, and the other one was Nicola, who's going to be our next head of middle school. Yeah. So I'm like, all right. So yeah, when I walk away from Green School and I look at the teachers that are here and the leaders that are here and the hand that I had in bringing them here, I feel great about that. So it's one of my favorite parts of my role.
Talent scout. Yeah, I mean, do you get vast amounts of applications?
Vast, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Vast.
Why do you think that's the case? What's going on there? I've heard that numerous times, that we get loads and loads of applications.
We have a high profile. People know we're out here, right? And then there's all sorts of aspects to it. Progressive educators like yourself who are knowing that the traditional system's not serving. They want something different. They want to use their creativity as an educator and take their passions and really light kids' fires and really make a difference in the world. They have their eye on us, right? And not to mention that it's in Bali. And let's go live in Bali. And not to mention that, the wave around, Europe and the North America for sure of populist governments who are doing a whole lot of selling fear and anger. It's frustrating a lot of people, and a lot of people are thinking about, I want to step away from this noise and go to people who are focused on making a difference and really engaging. And I think they're looking to us. A lot of those people are seeing us as a possible portal for that.
So what stands out for you, though, when you have a pile of applicants?
So, the first screen is we have to have, by Indonesian law, our international applicants have to have at least 5 years since they graduated college. Okay. So they have to have 5 years experience. But for me, what stands out is something that shows an entrepreneurial spirit, teachers that come at it. This might be a little partial, but teachers who come at education as a second career or even a little bit later as an adult tend to bring a whole lot more to the table. Yep. So I look for that. Teachers that have shown have done a lot of travel, teachers that have started their own businesses, teachers that have shown through their jobs, even if they've just worked traditional schools, that they're pushing the envelope, that they're looking for those portals of how they can take this social studies class and connect it to the community around them, how they can get these kids, active in what's going on in their communities. Who are really looking to take that intellectual-based education and bring experience to it and real-world experience. They're out there. They're doing it. And when I see that in the applications, it's like, okay, let's have a discussion with these people, right? And then that's where it gets more nuanced. It's like, okay, this is the middle school team. This is who's on the middle school right now. How will this person work on that team? And looking for the diversity. It's like they would bring in a nice little, have you thought about it this way? And so, yeah, it gets a little nuanced after that first round of
putting the pieces together, the pieces of the puzzle.
But you're looking for those educators who are pushing the envelope, who are saying, no, let's try this, and a little bit of disruptors, right? Muckrackers.
So what's next? What's next for Glenn?
So Glenn is moving on to a school I'm pretty excited about. It's unfortunately named, and sorry if you guys hear me say this, but the Hawaii Preparatory Academy.
Okay.
Which makes you think uniforms and, old school learning, but they're pretty progressive and they want to get more so. And they
you're moving to Hawaii.
Moving to Hawaii.
Wow.
And they're progressive. They want to get more so. They have a big sustainability initiative, and they had reached out to me actually to invite me to interview. And
which island?
On the Big Island.
Hey.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like I said, the big initiative was get closer to family, most of whom are in Colorado. So that's where our bullseye was, and we had a few options that were panning out, like on the west coast of the U.S. And when Hawaii first came up as a possibility, we were like, oh, that's just not close enough, da-da-da. But then we started doing our research, and from the Big Island, there's 2 airlines doing daily direct flights to Colorado. And then, the school, I just met the people and really, really synced with them and really loved it. And it all just kind of fell into place, and it just felt like the right thing at the right time. And so we're going with it, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, Bali to Hawaii, but closer to
know.
home.
I know forever I was a mountain boy, right? And I was like, oh, no, the tropics, they're fun to visit. But now I spent 11 years in Bali, and I'm heading to Hawaii indefinitely. But with that direct route to Colorado to go skiing and visit family.
And from my opinion, it seems like the perfect fit from where you've come from.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, it's been epic. It's been an hour and 15 seconds. It's been an absolute pleasure. I just want to thank you for your time and your inspiration since I've met you. And it's been an absolute pleasure watching you operate in the manner that you do. I respect your sincerity, I respect your consistency, and I respect your approachable nature. You are very approachable.
Wow, Shannon, thank you for the kind words. And the pleasure was mine. I love this conversation. I'd love to do it for another hour.
And you've got to run.
I've got to run.
Busy man.
I just got to catch the bus. The bio bus, I should say. Yeah.
All right, see you, brother. High five.
Pleasure,
See you,
man.
mate.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Catch up.